Hi guys, my name is Monica and I'm recording this video to warn you against an airline called LATAM, which also uses the name LAN and TAM. LATAM is the result of the merging between LAN and TAM. So please watch out. Mainly I would like to tell you, don't fly with them because you might actually never fly as they cancel the flights all the time. And before you decide to even consider flying with them, at least Google LATAM issues, LATAM problems, Google the reviews to see what hell people go through when they decide to travel with them. You can also go on Facebook. You can go on the LATAM page and see comments below the photos that they use as advertisement. See the stories of people. You'll be horrified. I invite you to take a look at Twitter. My account is called LATAM Víctimas in Spanish, but that means victims of LATAM. I'll put the link down to my account below the video. You also have the Matt Zions, who is another guy that was affected by LATAM and was so shocked at the horrible customer service, or shall I say anti-customer service, that actually established an account. We're talking about hundreds of people affected per day, people who have their luggage lost or stolen, their belongings are stolen from the suitcases when they fly with LATAM. Obviously, usually it's the most valuable stuff. People who are discriminated against, and we're talking about disabled people, elderly, children who fly without parents and go through hell. We're talking about delays of flights and no compensation paid, lost connections, cancellations, arbitrary actions taken by the staff of LATAM, the rudest, the most unpleasant treatment that people go through because of I'm not actually sure why. I think they pay them very badly. There was actually a strike in Argentina recently. But LATAM staff is really absolutely obnoxious. And if you're traveling with the baby, especially, please don't use this airline. I will very briefly tell you what happened to us. I'll put a detailed explanation below the video. But basically, we went through hell with LATAM. We were flying from Ecuador to Poland with a connection in Madrid. I'm Polish. My daughter is born in Ecuador. And we were basically flying to my home country, LATAM, due to the ignorance. They don't know about visa policies. And they stopped us from flying by force in really terrible circumstances. Immediately sent the security of the airport against us. No manager was talking to us, or even though I was begging for that. They separated me from my husband. They used physical violence against me and my one-year-old daughter. They would not listen to any explanations, and as a matter of fact, my daughter had the right to fly because she is a baby of a Polish mom, so she had an absolute right to fly to Poland and didn't need a visa for Schengen area as LATAM claimed. So we obviously lost our connections, we lost the flight, and that was only the beginning of hell that LATAM caused us. We were in transit. We were supposed to arrive in Poland on the 6th of August. We were leaving on the 4th, and eventually we arrived on the 11th. And because they lost our luggage, we only made it to my hometown, which was our final destination, on the 16th, guys. They also destroyed our suitcase. They left us in transit in Ecuador, treating us in the most horrible and inhumane fashion that you could possibly imagine. We had another flight with them on the 8th of August. This was torture, and I believe it was done on purpose. They were discriminated against us because we had already taken legal actions against them between 4th and 8th of August. So they basically kept us at the airport for 12 hours, put us on the plane, then called the police against us to remove us from the plane, then told us that we can actually fly, no problem. Then they took us, they didn't let us board the plane at 11 p.m. after, I don't know, over half a day of waiting at the airport and in the plane and being refused food for the baby, just like totally monstrous things. They eventually called the police and the security of Ecuador airport, which actually didn't want to do it because they knew we didn't do anything. The plane, there was too much weight on the plane for the amount of petrol they had. So they were like taking people off voluntarily, and then they removed half of the luggage of the passengers, and then they removed us because it was supposed to be a compensation flight. So that was a fourth or fifth day of us in transit, and then even more hell took place. And then when we finally made it to Poland, and after a month and a half, when our baby finally recuperated, she was so sick from the stress that she underwent in the transit, being at the airports and going through violence and screams and shouts and abuse and humiliation. She was very, very sick, treated in the hospital. We found out that our return flight to Ecuador was basically stolen by LATAM. They didn't let Want to Trip, which was the travel agent we bought the flight with, about the fact that the day they didn't let us board the flight due to their ignorance, they resold our tickets. So while we had various managers of LATAM talk to us, we had a lawyer represent us, we had a case against them in the court for consumer defense in Ecuador, which we won. Nobody informed us that they also decided to simply steal our ticket back to Ecuador, where we live, where we have our home, our business, hostel, and where our baby was born, where our whole life is based. On top of this, because they removed my husband from the plane twice and didn't let us fly, they kept us in Ecuador until the day after his visa. So in the consequence, and they knew about it perfectly well, my husband cannot enter the very country where he lives and owns a business for 9 months. So we are now stuck in Poland. I'm Polish, but I haven't lived here for 15 years, I think, or more. And my husband is Brazilian. We're trying to create a new life for ourselves here for the time being. We had to rent out our business in Ecuador, and we are struggling because we are trying to take legal actions against LATAM, and this is something I want to tell you now. If you do decide to fly with them, which is a huge risk, trust me, nobody's paying me for doing this. I went through hell. I don't want for anyone to go through that hell, and especially with a baby or elderly mom, because there are hundreds of stories of abuse of that kind that elderly people suffer as well. Guys, if you're European, you will be not protected by any law or any institution in Europe if you fly with LATAM, because LATAM is a Chilean company. So this is something that I only found out after all of this happened to us. And as sorry as those institutions who normally defend consumer rights are not to be able to help, they can't. It's just not within their competence. So if you imagine, if you want to fight for compensation and you deserve one, and LATAM will not give it to you, you will have to hire a lawyer, and most probably in Chile or wherever the destination was. And it will have to be someone who specializes in aviation law, which is a very specific subject, and there are very few lawyers, or they're very costly. So it's going to be difficult. All I'm saying is that save yourself the hassle and the inconvenience, the stress and the trouble and the trauma probably, because I can't tell you enough what trauma they caused us and how much they affected our lives, our family.